Good afternoon to you. 506 Now News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour from Hot Air, Ed Morrissey will join us. You can talk to us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL.
There's no question that international travel can be rigorous. I think the confusion is that he's still suffering from the effects of that nearly 2 weeks later. So can you articulate a little bit about, do you guys usually have accommodations for him after he does a trip, that he's going to have jet lag for that long a period of time?
So can you, when you say 2 weeks later, what do you mean?
Well, the debate, he arrives back in the United States 12 or 13 days before the debate. So his explanation for a poor debate performance is jet lag.
So what I want to say is it's the jet lag and also the cold, right? It is the two things and that occurred. And you all heard it in his voice when he did the debate, right? And it is not even something that we shared ahead of time. You heard it in his voice and we confirmed it. And I think that's important to note as well. Like, it is the jet lag and the cold.
Yeah, of course. Who doesn't need 2 weeks off after they come back from their trip in order to recover? It's all so crazy. Congressman Scott Perry joins us now. He's an Army combat veteran, and he represents Pennsylvania's 10th Congressional District. Congressman, good to have you with us on the show.
Vince, great to be with you at full operating power. I'm thrilled that you're here, and I love listening to you every time I get an opportunity. And I will tell you, when I watched President Biden at the debate, just to set the stage, I was by myself. I wasn't at some watch party or something. I wanted to sit there and really pay attention. And I thought that, the pundits were all going to say, well, Joe Biden won this because he answered the questions and he stood there for 90 minutes. He stood there the whole time. He didn't have a teleprompter, and he answered every question. I saw Joe Biden just as I've seen him for the last 3.5 years. I watched him slurring his words, his weak speech pattern, the things that didn't make any sense at all, where I wondered, as President Trump said, I don't understand what you just said, and I don't even think you understand what you just said. But I thought to myself, well, yeah, that's Joe Biden. Like, you and I have been seeing him be this for the last 3.5 years. It's stunning to much of America and the rest of the world because they're watching sanitized news and they don't get to see that. But it was on full display, and they couldn't hide it from everybody. And so I think that's what they're running from right now. This is the Joe Biden. This is Joe Scarborough's best Joe Biden, right?
Congressman, I'm so glad you said that, because I actually was thinking this morning. I was sitting in my car. I was driving here, and I was thinking, everyone's acting all surprised about that debate performance. I actually wasn't stunned by Biden's presentation. I thought, well, this is consistent. So I'm right there with you. It's weird, isn't it, to see people, first of all, react to it the way that they are. And it's so, insane and so inauthentic, the way the media is pretending like they just discovered this, Congressman.
Well, yeah, they're part and parcel to this great mystery that they've created over all this time with people like Joe Scarborough. Again, we don't have to get into that, but all of them saying that he's lucid and he is one of the most great critical thinkers and he's right on top of the issues. They have been part of this charade throughout. And so not only does it lay Joe Biden bare for who he really is, and quite honestly, let's face it, it's sad. This is an elderly guy that really shouldn't be. It's sad. But they're part and parcel to this whole thing and their credibility. I don't know what it's going to take for them to have zero credibility, because somehow people still listen to them, and I don't know why.
So I have a friend, colleague, and a boss, Neil Patel. He's a publisher of the Daily Caller, where I'm also an editor. And he expressed the following today on X. He said this. He said, is anybody aware of a bigger misinformation campaign in history than the White House staff and the Biden family trying to sneak a clearly incapacitated candidate past the voters? This campaign included elaborate lies, vicious attacks on anyone who dared to speak up. Even clear video evidence was denounced as cheap fakes. All these partisan lies were, of course, aided and then parroted by a compliant corporate media eager to help. The social media companies tell us they're really worried about misinformation. Are they going to start blocking the accounts of the people that took part in the greatest misinformation campaign the world has ever seen? It seems fair for people to question their motives, if not. He's making so many excellent points here, Congressman, but one of them is the big thing is, like, this is one of the biggest con jobs in American history. And most people I know didn't fall for it, but there are a lot of people who are trying to perpetrate it.
No, you're absolutely right, and he does make outstanding points. And it's just the biggest con job since the last biggest con job, right? Which one was it? Was it COVID? Was it the impeachment of the president twice for made up things? Was it Trump-Russia collusion? Has it been, don't worry about what's not in your wallet. The cost of living and inflation is a figment of your imagination, and the right wing, the right wing cabal that, some conspiracy. Then Hunter Biden, and, which, so it's the biggest one since the last one, which, oh, by the way, was just like last week, right?
Yeah, that just keeps happening. Congressman, what do we do with this information? Obviously, once again, it's obvious that the president is what the phrase is non compos mentis, and the media are now admitting that. What does that tell us about our national security situation? I would think under normal circumstances, definitely if it was a Republican, we'd be hearing a lot about what peril we are in by having a demented president.
What do you mean if it was a Republican? The last Republican that was in office without any justification whatsoever, they demanded him take a cognitive ability test, and then when he took it a couple of times, they just discounted it. What are we to do with this? I think, the problem is that we've got, 4 or 5 months to an election, and I think that it's right for Congress and, quite honestly, the cabinet to highlight the fact that it's clear that he's just really not capable. And they say, well, he's good from 10 o'clock in the morning until 3 in the afternoon or something like that. Well, I'm glad that they let all our adversaries know when the time is to attack. So, from midnight on till 6, you're good to go. That's very, very concerning. I think what we really need to know, because let's face it, they're not really going to do anything. They're not going to change course. It looks like he's going to remain the nominee. But I think it's right for the American people to know who's really answering the 3 o'clock in the morning telephone call.
Yeah, I've seen some defenses of Biden that have been raised this week from lefties who say, don't worry, because he's got all sorts of, people around him who are basically really running the country. And I'm looking at this going, this is insane. Do you hear yourselves? The party that claims it's defending, quote, democracy is telling us that we need to just be, we should be okay with, have some solace that the cabal that we don't even know, the faceless cabal, is running everything.
Yeah, what they don't realize is that that's one of our prime concerns and worries since this president took office, because we knew that he was generally incapable then. And so all along, we've known that there's this shadow government. We'd like to know who's making the decisions, who's really in charge of each major portion of the government, and especially things like national security. Is there a person that they can point to in each one of these arenas? Because let's face it, we all kind of suspected that was happening. We just like to put a face with the name now.
Sure. Now that we've seen all of this, and now the media is repeating the kinds of things you and I have been saying for years, Congressman, do you think we actually need the Robert Hur audio anymore? It kind of seems like a moot point now.
Well, no, I actually do think we need the Robert Hur audio, if for nothing else, just to make sure that the Justice Department understands that they can't just ignore and make up reasons to not provide the best evidence possible in a criminal trial. But, look, I'm not looking to just pile on, but let's face it, the President Trump is still under, some kind of criminal prosecution veil for this alleged document scheme that they're calling out. Meanwhile, President Biden has walked away scot-free. And I think, if nothing else, the American people need to understand how this justice system, so-called justice system, works, and what they've got to be able to do, what they have to do, or what somebody has to do to be able to commit crimes and not be persecuted or prosecuted for them. Conversely, what do you have to be aware of that they might conjure up on you, even if you haven't done anything wrong, to try and silence you and make you irrelevant to society. America needs to know that, and those tapes will help us define that.
Congressman, you're a military veteran, and I'm looking at what's going on right now with at the White House. First and foremost, that debate last week. You had a question, actually, just in the midst of the debate. Joe Biden claimed that there have been no military deaths on his watch. He was bragging about something that was completely untrue. The White House is, of course, telling us today that was all the product of jet lag and a cold. But what did you think when you heard the commander-in-chief make such a brazen declaration?
I will tell you, people that have worn the uniform and family members that have watched their sons and daughters, fathers and mothers never come home and die in battle. It's a rage that is indescribable for the commander-in-chief to just discount them as non-existent. And of course, the media narrative is that Trump was lying because, everybody said it was the greatest and everybody said that it was the best. It's like, we understand political hyperbole. Even in your own family setting, everybody loves Grammy's cake. Because even if one person doesn't love it exactly as much as the other, no one's going to say it. But it's a term of art. Meanwhile, while we can actually name the names of those who lost their lives defending America because of poor decisions and bad judgment, are just discounted, thrown in the dustbin of history like they didn't even exist for political purposes, so that Joe Biden can claim that Donald Trump is the guy that murders soldiers, not him. Outrageous. So outrageous.
The same guy who was staring at his watch during the dignified transfer of remains at Dover now says none of those deaths even happened. It's just so
right.
It's so outrageous, as you point out. But additionally, Congressman, now we get this detail from the press that Hunter Biden is sitting in on all of these White House meetings. That seems like a real problem for a number of reasons. One of them is he's just the son of the president. Why would he be involved in important White House meetings? Also, wasn't he just convicted a couple weeks ago? This guy's a convicted felon who's sitting in on all of these White House meetings. And then finally, he was kicked out of the military for his cocaine usage. I would think that all adds up to you don't get a security clearance. So why would that guy be in the meetings?
Yeah, I don't understand that. And I'm not a big fan of family members for the sake of, just because they're a family member being privy to these conversations and decisions. But if you have an acumen and a background and you're qualified, so to speak, to be there, then so be it. But obviously, Hunter Biden, to his own admission, isn't really qualified to be. Well, look, we don't know what they're discussing. I guess if they're discussing cocaine usage, meth usage, prostitution, and if they're discussing grifting and taking money from foreign governments for political influence, then maybe he has an expertise. So let's not assume we know what the discussion in the White House is.
Maybe he was the subject matter expert. I hadn't even contemplated it. Congressman Scott Perry, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Vince. Great to be with you. So appreciate it. God bless you.
Following on our conversation with Congressman Scott Perry just moments ago, here's audio today. Our buddy Philip Wegman over at Real Clear Politics asking Karinge Jean-Pierre, why did the president lie about troop deaths on Thursday? How does a cold explain that?
Thank you. I wanted to ask you about some of the things the president said last week.
Last week?
Yes.
Okay.
Obviously, 13 U.S. service members died at Abbey Gate during the Afghanistan withdrawal. And then this year, 3 U.S. service members died in a drone attack in Jordan. And yet the president said, quote, he's the only president this century, this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did, end quote. I get having a bad night, but how could the president get that so wrong?
So I appreciate the question. I really do. And I was asked about this, I believe, in the gaggle on Friday, I believe. And I said this, and I'll just reiterate this now. And again, I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, sure, she
Look,
does.
the president cares deeply about our service members. He does. And their families, their immense sacrifices that they've made to take on the...
not enough to recognize their deaths, but he sort of cares.
And he takes on his responsibility as a commander-in-chief, and that is something that certainly he will continue to do. I mentioned moments ago that tomorrow on July 4th, he's going to have active military members here and their families.
Can you imagine if she just told the truth for once, It was like, the movie Liar, Liar with Jim Carrey, where he just, all of a sudden, he can't lie about anything, including the color of a pen, It's like she just blurts out, he has dementia, Phil.
To thank them personally. And obviously their families make sacrifices as well. And as you know, he attended the dignified transfer of the 13, as you just mentioned,
goodness.
brave service members who lost their lives.
She's exactly like Joe Biden. Biden last week, remember, in the midst of an abortion question, brought up the border chaos. She's like, and then he wants to talk about immigrants killing Americans. I'm like, oh my goodness, what? Why are you bringing up your biggest political problem? Why are you doing that? It's so stupid. And here she is being like, oh, remember, he was at the dignified transfer of remains. Yeah, we remember. We remember. The callous disregard for the fallen. Everybody remembers that.
Afghanistan on August 26 in 2021, and as well as the 3 who lost their lives in Jordan earlier this year. I was there with the president, and you can see how much how important he understood it was for him to be there for that
when he
moment,
was staring at his watch.
Be there for the families. And so
I have other places to be.
Just want to be really clear about that, because he has so much gratitude.
Oh, sure.
And we know that as a country, we can never repay them for their courage.
Yeah, she just yammers on and on and on and on, hoping everybody forgets what the question was. Maybe that'll work. I mean, we got to try something. We pay her. How much do we pay her? Is $180,000 a year for that garbage? That claptrap? She can't be fired soon enough. Coming up, Ed Morrissey. Speaking of hot air, he works for the website, and he'll join us next. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:35 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. If you're in your car, if you're traveling, heading off to some fabulous Independence Day celebration, stay safe. Lifting up a prayer for everybody tonight that we have a great Independence Day. We have a great country. And boy, wouldn't we like to make it great again. Working on it. Today, CNN reports that the New York Times' story is right, that Joe Biden knows that his campaign may be coming to an end. Listen to this.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Breaking news, CNN has learned President Biden has privately acknowledged a series of critical tests are ahead in the next stretch of days. Those tests essential to determining whether he can stay in the race for the White House. CNN White House correspondent MJ Lee joining us now. MJ, what more are you learning?
Erica, what I am learning, and this is according to an ally of the president's who spoke with the president directly yesterday, is that the president has privately acknowledged that the next stretch of days are going to be so critical to the question of whether he can save his re-election campaign.
Yeah, we'll see. Joining us now, Ed Morrissey is the managing editor over at Hot Air and the author of Going Red. Ed, good to talk to you today, sir.
Well, thanks for having me back. Great to be with you.
It does seem to me like there is a lot of behind-the-scenes pressure going on right now. And even this New York Times report and this CNN report where they say, oh, an ally says Biden might just drop out soon. I don't even know whether or not I believe that, quite honestly. It feels to me like maybe that's some establishment figure trying to wish that into existence.
Yeah, maybe the ally is Barack Obama. I don't know.
Yeah.
It certainly is possible. I would hope that both New York Times and CNN would have a little more integrity than that. But then again, what am I saying?
I know. It's not like they've ever lied to us about anything else.
No. They've never gaslit us about the status of Joe Biden before. Why should we suspect them now? But I do think that perhaps at least people on his team are starting to think that he either has to turn this thing around in the next couple of days or it's really good. He's going to really have a complete collapse of support. And the problem is that they're trying to accelerate the nomination at the same time. So he doesn't have until the convention. He's got until, I think, next week or early the week after, which is when they were going to hold that conference call with all the delegates and make his nomination official because of a couple state deadlines that they had issues with.
Give me your prediction on this George Stephanopoulos interview. It's set to be recorded Friday. It's going to air Sunday. I think there's an instinct among a lot of conservatives. Yeah, that's a Clinton, White House press shop guy. There's no way this interview is going to hurt Biden. It's going to be tightly edited to make him look great. I'm of the opinion that actually this guy may be there to finish Biden off on behalf of the establishment. What are you expecting this weekend?
I think my instincts run to the first case. I think that they're going to package him up, make him look okay, because the problem is that what you have after Joe Biden is Kamala Harris, and Kamala Harris is unelectable. And, I mean, it was a huge mistake adding her to the ticket in 2020. She's terrible on the stump. She's got all the same problems of coherence that Joe Biden has, with none of the excuses.
That's right. But on the polling, though, I'm looking at polling, though, this weekend, and I think it's mostly registered voter polling, but they keep telling us nationwide that Joe Biden is trailing Donald Trump by about 6 or 7 points, but that Kamala Harris in a head-to-head against Trump is only back 2 points. So doesn't that suggest Kamala is a more palatable candidate for their chances of victory?
When was the last time anybody heard from Kamala Harris? Because as soon as she opens her mouth, those numbers are going to change, and everybody knows that. I mean, let's remember 2019. It's just 5 years ago. She jumped into the campaign, the primary campaign, as really the favorite. If Joe Biden hadn't gotten in, she was the favorite. She had California, which was going to be an early primary state in that cycle. She was sort of the up-and-coming darling of the progressives. She fit all the identitarian prerequisites that they were hoping for in the 2020 cycle. They wanted to nominate a black woman. She was the only one that was really gaining traction, and she had a lot of money behind her. And she got into the first debate, trashed Joe Biden as a racist. And then in the next debate, Tulsi Gabbard, really in the next two debates, Tulsi Gabbard just humiliated her on stage. As soon as she was challenged on stage, she couldn't answer it. She stumbled around, she chuckled, she looked, she had the sort of the Dan Quayle look in the eyes.
Yep.
And that happened twice during the debates. And she ended up failing out in October. She didn't even get to Iowa, and she was only drawing 3% of Democrat support at that point in time.
Yeah, and she was polling very poorly in her home state of California, too, in that primary. She never made it to the California primary, but they did not like her.
At the end, yes. At the end, she was polling poorly. But at the beginning, she was full of promise. So, again, the reason why she's polling reasonably well at the moment is because she hasn't been out in public.
Yeah, and she owns this, insofar as, she becomes the person. If she becomes the nominee, and we have any sense of what her record is to judge her by, she's the border czar, Ed Morrissey. And number two issue for the entire American public, right behind economy and inflation, is the border.
Right. And she's got no experience at this, and she's got no experience at economics. I mean, she was an attorney general in California, where she only did passably well, and mainly got by based on really good PR and not having to do a lot of campaigning. She was sort of an insider in the California Democrat Party, and it's different when you are campaigning nationally. And I'd say she probably would have difficulty in California this year, too, if she really had to do this. But the problem for Democrats is they can't really get around her. If Biden has to withdraw from the race, there's going to be a lot of question as to whether or not he should actually resign from office. If he resigns from office, then she becomes president and she becomes the nominee. There's just no way around it. But even without that, even if he withdraws, there are two things that are going on. First off, she's a sitting vice president. She was on the ticket, and she's been on the ticket in this cycle too, which means that she's the only person who can legally use the fundraising that has been going on for the Biden-Harris campaign.
Right.
That money can't transfer out. Now, I'm sure that there'll be tons of lawyers who are going to try to free that money up if they have to go with somebody else. But the fact of the matter is that at this point in time, they'd have to basically burn that cash and hope to raise enough for whoever else they're going to put on the ticket.
Now, as we look at the numbers, there's a lot of belief that this is almost insurmountable for the Democrats now as President Trump. If the voters have a free and fair election, it looks like President Trump is coming back to the White House, because I'm looking at these, and it's not just the swing states in which President Trump is now dominating, especially after that debate. It's states that weren't even in play before. Virginia is getting closer and closer to a 1% advantage at the very least for President Trump. New Mexico, it looks like it's going into Trump's column. It's remarkable, Ed Morrissey, to see these numbers and how quickly they're moving to the right.
Yeah, Sabato's crystal ball moved Michigan into a toss-up status, and they moved Minnesota from solid Dem to likely Dem. And look, I lived for 23 years in Minnesota. I can tell you that that's not going to go Republican. But the fact that people are starting to look at it, and the polls are actually fairly close at the moment. I think that has a lot of Democrats worried. I would be very surprised if New Mexico fell into the Trump column. They've been pretty solidly blue for quite a long period of time. And but I mean, if you're losing New Mexico,
yeah.
And I think Virginia has always been in play. But if Virginia is swinging that way, a little bit more solidly now, Democrats are in real trouble.
And part of the reason we know some of these polling numbers is not just the public polls. A internal Democrat poll was leaked earlier this week. And it seems pretty clear to me, Ed, that it was leaked kind of intentionally as inducement to get Biden out of office while they have a chance.
Right. And I think that there's two things going on here. One is I think that they've just figured that Biden canceled any hope of keeping the White House in November, even if they replace him. That is a hugely traumatic event politically, and it's never worked where you've been able to win an election after doing that. But the problem for them is the down ballot races. You take a look at the CBS poll that came out today, and I think also from the New York Times CNN poll that came out today as well, is that enthusiasm is now dropping among Democrat voters. And it's rising among Republican voters. And if that continues, then you're talking about a whole lot of at-risk House and Senate Democrats who are going to lose these elections, and Republicans will wind up controlling, both chambers of Congress and the White House.
I hadn't even really contemplated this until our conversation, Ed. But what if the conclusion right now is that Democrats know they're not winning the White House entirely in November? They've come to that conclusion. It's over. They've taken the Congressman Jared Golden approach, which is, Trump's winning this thing. So they're looking to stop the bleeding, perhaps. They want to bring in a better communicator as the head of the party and see what they can do to salvage the House and Senate.
Yeah, in fact, I think the donors are already talking about that. There's been stories about how Democrat donors are holding meetings to try to figure out how to redirect their money to House and Senate races because they figure that the White House is just lost. After that debate, there's just no way that Biden can bounce back, and if they have to replace Biden, it's just going to be a political catastrophe to replace Biden in the middle of a campaign after. And really, the issue too here is that Democrats protected Biden until that debate.
Yes,
they didn't allow for an honest primary challenge, right? There's RFK tried to do it. Dean Phillips from Minnesota, who's actually the cousin of a friend of mine, Scott Johnson from Powerline. That's his cousin.
How about?
Tried to warn them and say, look, he's too old for this. We need to have a primary so that we can get a candidate who can actually do the job. And they locked it down and shut him out. And now they're stuck with what they've got.
I want to play some audio for you. This is Nancy Pelosi this week on MSNBC. And I thought this was the biggest sign yet that the establishment is completely done with Biden. Here's Nancy Pelosi. Take a listen.
So we have all these things that he was masterful in helping to orchestrate, to write, and to pass. So he has a vision, he has knowledge, he has judgment, he has a strategic thinking, and the rest. He has a bad night. Now, again, I think it's a legitimate question to say, is this an episode or is this a condition?
She went on to say that both Trump and Biden, importantly, should do a cognitive test.
We should be tearing up what he said the other day because it was a pack of lies. And it's very hard to debate somebody when you have to undo or debunk everything they're saying. But again,
arguably,
I think that both candidates owe whatever test you want to put them to in terms of their mental acuity and their health.
That's Nancy Pelosi sharpening the knife. Am I right?
Yeah, I think kind of, yes. But, also I think she's trying to excuse it. It's actually really easy to debate a liar because you just keep pointing out that they're lying. And you back it up with facts. And the problem was that all Biden could do was saying, oh, you lie. And that was it. The Democrats got really furious with CNN for not doing in-the-moment fact checks as part of the moderation, which they had said right up front that they weren't going to do because they learned the lesson from Candy Crowley 12 years ago.
Yes.
And what happens when you do that and get it wrong. And so they were very clear that they weren't going to do that. It's up to the opposing candidate to do the fact check. And the problem is that Joe Biden just can't keep a thought in his head. He can't keep the data straight. And Joe Biden was lying all along, too. And so the whole thing was just a case of Joe Biden's just simply not competent to do this job. Now, I'd also tend to disagree with pretty much everything else that Nancy Pelosi said about what Joe Biden used to be, because, and I have to say this very carefully for FCC reasons, Joe Biden has always been 20 pounds of manure in a 10-pound bag.
Mm-hmm.
For the last 37 years, this guy, the first time he ran for president, he plagiarized speeches from Neil Kinnock, including Neil Kinnock's autobiographical.
Yes, the first in his family to
autobiography.
graduate from college. This nonsense he was making up.
Right. I mean, he's always lied. He's always faked. He's always cheated. And the idea that this guy is a strategic thinker is,
I know.
I mean, laughably absurd.
And today they're saying, oh, look, they're sending out campaign emails that say he's still running. Oh, okay. Oh, he's telling the truth this time? So does that mean he was actually a truck driver in his career? Does that actually mean that he was arrested trying to visit Nelson Mandela? Does that mean he actually grew up in the Puerto Rican community? Does that mean he went to the black church every Sunday? Are you telling me that he was telling the truth the whole time? We should trust this guy? He's a man of integrity?
No. Clearly not. Clearly not. But this is what they're left with. This is what they're left with. Well, you know, he was a guiding light for us, and you know he's fading maybe a little bit now, but you know he still can do the job. No, he can't. No, he can't. And it's been obvious for at least 2 years. When the Easter Bunny has to block you from accessing reporters on the White House lawn, I mean, they knew then. They had the Easter Bunny tracking him to keep him from talking to reporters because they didn't trust him to be able to come across well.
Yep.
And
it's true. It's true. If you're going to run one of the biggest con jobs in American history, at least make it hilarious. So at least we got that.
There you go.
Thank you. Ed Morrissey from Hot Air. Great website, great guide. Great to talk to you, sir. Nice. Have a great Independence Day.
You too, sir.
Well, the Trump campaign has finally released a statement on all of this chaos. Chris LaCivita and Susie Wiles, they're the two who are running the campaign on behalf of President Trump. And here's what they say today. Every Democrat who is calling on crooked Joe Biden to quit was once a supporter of Biden and his failed policies that lead to extreme inflation, an open border, and chaos at home and abroad. Make no mistake that Democrats, the mainstream media, and the swamp colluded to hide the truth from the American public. Joe Biden is weak, failed, dishonest, and not fit for the White House. Every one of them has lied about Joe Biden's cognitive state and supported his disastrous policies over the past 4 years, especially cackling co-pilot Kamala Harris. President Trump will beat any Democrat on November 5th because he has a proven record and an agenda to make America great again. So that's the statement out of the Trump campaign. And what does it tell us? Well, one, they're pointing out all of these liars who are now running out saying, hey, isn't it weird that Joe Biden can't think? No, you covered that up. You were a part of that cabal, and now you're trying to move on. The other piece is that the Trump campaign is prepared for a different candidate now and is sending out the message, all of these Democrats own this disaster. So no matter who they put there, we're ready to run against them. A big statement. Hey, Independence Day. I love Independence Day. It's going to be great. I got to go buy my fireworks. The best part about buying fireworks for me is I wait until the very last second when they're doing the 80 for 1 deal. They're like, all these fireworks stands you see on the roads, they need to get rid of all their stuff. So tomorrow I'm going to be like Antifa, practically looting the place. It's going to be great. Put up a bunch of fireworks, celebrate my country. I've got the American flag out. I've got the bunting hanging on the house. I brushed my dog today. We got company coming over. I don't need dog hair all over them. It's going to be a fantastic time. I hope you have an excellent Independence Day. Have a hamburger for me.